Welcome to the Senior Citizens Talk of HICGI News Agency. My name is Chivumbi Anas Benjamin. Welcome our viewers from all over the world, from London, United Kingdom to Tokyo, Japan, Africa, and Nigeria, where we are hosting Professor Esimone Charles from Nnamdi Azikiwe University. Professor, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Professor, you are attending one of the very significant forums on the African continent powered by the United Nations African Union. And this is the 7th Science and Technology as well Innovation Forum. There's a concern that Africa, as much as it is trying to run, but it's still behind in technology. Hardly are we able to manufacture even a needle after so many years. Most of the countries are 50 years independent, but we cannot manufacture anything. We are just trying, if we try to show people what we are doing, we're just assembling. What is the problem?
So thank you very much. I'm happy that we're addressing this, and at this 7th African Regional Science, Technology and Innovation Forum. And so Africa is richly endowed, with human capacity, with biodiversity, and with very conducive natural environments that easily we can use as a comparative advantage to leapfrog to where we ought to be. But there are problems, there are challenges, and that has made it impossible so far for Africa to attain that level in terms of, you're talking about manufacturing, about production, which is key. First, we have to identify the gap in human capacity. The human capacity gap is very palpable, and as you heard the Honorable Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation of Uganda, who said today, when they wanted to make a paradigm shift, to see how science, technology, innovation could benefit the economy, to create jobs and empower people, they had to do a mindset change. Africans today, a lot of us are doing research. I'm a professor of pharmacy in my university, and I'm in the immediate past vice chancellor of the university, the big federal university of over 60,000. But then we can say that if you look across many of our countries, even our university institutions, the mindset to do science, technology, innovation-based research that will impact on the economy is very negative. People don't know why they do science, and that is fundamental in Africa. People are very smart, they are very intelligent, but how to do science so that it will benefit, that knowledge is not there. So there needs to be that paradigm shift again. Of course, there is decadence in infrastructure. Infrastructure is not available. Basic things like power, like good roads, like even internet connectivity, broadband that is needed to do cutting-edge science, some equipment that are needed, they are also lacking in Africa, and government has to be deliberate in terms of policy to supply these things, these infrastructural deficits, to bridge that gap, to bridge that divide. But there's also a greater issue which people don't like to discuss, but we look at regulatory bottlenecks.
Okay.
Regulatory bottlenecks. Even if you have industries at lower levels that want to do this, but the framework, the stringent regulatory requirements are so high that they cannot meet up. For instance, in my area, pharmaceutical sciences, we talk about if you want to leapfrog to the next level, you need to be pre-qualified by the World Health Organization. And to be pre-qualified for you to produce indigenously in a level that is acceptable, they may take 15 years or 10, and then they are frustrated. The financing for that is not also there. So we see some of these, issues that are there, and then our friends in Europe, America, who are also helping us with this technology, they are very reluctant to do technology transfer. And when they don't transfer technology, you can't grow. So we keep on relying on human resources, human capital development from outside that is not transferable. So it's a complex mix that we need to address at different levels. I see it as something that is surmountable, and that's why this conference is very, very innovative. But Africans must learn to collaborate together. We cannot do it alone. There must be very strong regional cooperation between one nation and the other to encourage us, like they do in Europe. Europe, you can move from one place to the other, they can change, they can transfer, technology very easily, capacity development. They have framework that encourage, this, development within that framework. Africa needs to do the same thing also. So there are plethora of issues that are there. Of course, governance, transparency is not there. There's, in some areas. So people want to see, if they want to help you to put money or funding to assist you, and they want to see that the government is transparent, is accountable, and is able to do what they want to do. So these are some of the issues that we have highlighted. We can see that if it's handled, Africa will be able to be at the forefront of manufacturing, of producing, using STI as a platform.
Well, thank you so much. Talking about the World Health Organization, the other day the world experienced a pandemic, the COVID-19, and there were some local scientists. For instance, in Uganda, there was a gentleman, actually I think a professor, who also tried to come up with a COVID cure, kind of cure.
COVID-Dex ahead.
Yeah, COVID-Dex actually.
Mm-hmm.
So the government of Uganda took him through the process to try to identify and approve his medicine. But the World Health Organization, international bodies were reluctant. It was eventually agreed that his medicine was doing a lot in treating COVID-19. If in any case there's a lot of bureaucracy with the World Health Organization, regional firms like the African Union, like SADC, like East African Commission, and all that been positioned to accept their own people, promote their own technologies, so innovations like or eventual of that kind, so they don't have to go through this kind of international bureaucracy.
Exactly the point I'm making, that Africa needs to come together. Like you just said, if the other parts of the continents, if the other parts of the world are not, they are presenting very strict, very stringent regulatory requirements, Africa needs to evolve its own and produce medicines, produce products for Africans, African products for Africans. And that will need concerted effort among the African Union, as you just mentioned. Everyone must be speaking the same language. They must have the same goal. They must identify their goals and align strategies to do that in a very cheap way. Like the example that you just gave. What stops them from saying, okay, let us use our herbal medicine as a strength that we have, and let us validate it ourselves, sell it amongst ourselves, make it easier for it to move from one part of Africa to the other. African market alone is very big. The market is big. That is why from Asia, from Europe, they're flooding the market. So if we concentrate on our own and give it priority and say this is it, and then bring the best of our scientists together and all the ministries are involved to validate this and say this is what we want to do, we are going to use this within Africa. Alone, the market alone within Africa, look at Nigeria, look at South Africa, look at Democratic Republic of Congo, big population that if you have products that we develop here in Africa and say we are marketing it for Africa, we don't need these global regulations, we don't need this other certification, we want to sell for Africa alone. That is enough empowerment. And let me tell you, once we start producing, the capacity is there because experience comes with doing. But if you are not doing, if you are just relying on uptaking from outside, you don't have the experience, So we need to have experience. We need to have experience. We start small, okay? We start small and they will make mistakes, the treating problem. But with time, indigenous African products will be perfected to meet whatever global standard that is required. But we must start, and we must start together. It's not good to work in silos, because if you work in silos, you can be overpowered easily. But if there's a concomitant effort to bring everyone together, all the nations together like we are doing here, and they develop these strategies and products, and they take it to the market, and they buy it, they sell among themselves, they reduce taxes among African countries that are doing, because the regulatory things are very difficult. If you want to sell from one country to the other, look at the bottlenecks that are there. We say, remove this for Africans to produce indigenous African products. I tell you that within 5, 6, 10 years, Africa will be moving very high.
Yeah. Professor, also talking about African countries working together, there's been a very important notification of an agreement of Africa free trade area. When you look at this, it has been more on paper than in practical term. And we've not seen so many African countries opening doors for their citizens to freely travel and also do business. What could be the hindrance of that?
So, first is regulatory policies within different individual countries.
Glovi Logistics Limited, your number one customs clearing and forwarding cargo consolidation warehouse company. We do air shipment, worldwide sea shipment, transportation, tax consultation. Glovi Logistics Limited is a competent company specializing in logistics clearing and forwarding services. We have the necessary skills and resources and partnerships to tackle sizable projects to our clients' satisfaction. We are located at Mganziraza Plaza near the entrance of Katwe, Kampala, Uganda. Call us on +256 779 634 328 or +256 701 784 648 or visit our website glovylogistics.com or write to johnglovy@gmail.com. Glovy Logistics Limited, your number one clearing and forwarding company.
To be merged, they need to come together. But there are other critical issues that I've identified as a scientist, as a researcher who is also involved in social research now, that are very critical. Transportation is key. Okay, so if you want to promote the African free continental trade, there must be vibrant transportation network that cuts across Africa. I want to tell you that it will shock you. If I want to move goods, from Nigeria to Uganda by ship, it will be easier for me, that good will first of all move from Nigeria to go to China or go to India, and then before it comes down to Uganda to Kampala. So that
Oh
movement,
my
that easy
God.
movement, I mean by ship or even by train is not available at all. So the ministries of transportation of these different African continents to come together and say, let us address this because that is critical. They must address this. How do we see what the Chinese are doing? You know what they call it? Belt and Road Initiative. Let me tell you what Belt and Road Initiative is all about. The Chinese came up with a policy that if I want to create development in any rural place, no matter how remote the place is, first I'll create a belt, a road. I create a road. If I create a road there, it will now bring, people can come from every part of the world. So what they do, they just create road accessibility.
Wow.
Transportation, they identify that as a key thing and it's working. So you may hardly see any rural community that is not accessed. So people come from all over the world. They are buying Chinese goods, accessing Chinese products everywhere because they have created roads there. The same thing for Africa. Africa must be deliberate. Whether in the shipping sector, rail, we don't have rails that are causing trans-African rail station, even motorable roads or so. But rail, ship, very strategic to make this trade easy, of course, and then that will be now balanced by the very good conducive regulatory frameworks, tax policies among nations to reduce stringent tax policies when products are coming from one African nation or the other. You need to see how you can carry goods easily from Germany to Belgium to the Netherlands or so. They're all connected. The regulations are not too much there because they say this is European Union. But African Union, what are we doing? This country will say, this is my excise duty is this low. This one say this is low. This one say high. They'll add different things, making it difficult. We should create these things within Africa. We cut the stringent regulatory framework for African product within Africa, and then create vibrant shipping networks, road network. Government, African Union can come together and fund that. See, these are ships that are moving from West Africa to East Africa, from East Africa to Central Africa to South Africa, within Africa. But it's not there. Nobody's talking about that. We cannot grow our productivity, our industries within the region without transportation. How? Because logistics is key. Without logistics, there can't be proper supply chain. And that is where the ministers are supposed to come together and address very strategically. We want to do that. And everybody must know it's not me, it's us, us, us. If you say us, then it's a win-win situation. But me, you gain it this way, you lose several other ways. And then if you balance the two together, you have lost what you gain, you have lost again in other places.
And still talking about transportation, I know recently Uganda Airlines has launched a route to Nigeria, and that's a plus in terms of trying to connect the two countries. But still, other countries is very, very difficult, and the fares are very high to travel by air. And what could be what could be the cause of so much transport or flight costs within the continent?
So two things. Well, the most important one is individual nations, individual countries, or because so if, for instance, I give you just practical example. if Uganda Airways is coming to Nigeria, and so people need to pay with naira, right? For instance, we pay with naira. So how does how does the Ugandan government get its shillings from naira? So the governments in this individual country make it very difficult to repatriate these forex to the countries. So because of that, people know maybe if you pay naira, maybe it's going to take like 6 months or 7 months for you to get the equivalence back to you. So they have to increase it, right? So that within time, because this money that is not assessed, is diminishing value. So something like that. So the policy has to be put around that also to make it easier. So I'm buying my ticket from Nigeria or so, and I need to repatriate. We repatriate that funds as fast as possible. Of course, the common denominator that is used now, they use USD, of course. But Africa needs to come to a level. Somebody proposed that a long time ago.
For more than 10 years, Kebbi International Group has been your #1 partner in tours and travel consultancy. We also do real estate, legal services, ICT services, and much more. Find us on kebinternationalgroup.com or write to us at info@kebinternationalgroup.com. You may also write to us at PO Box 35827 Kampala, Uganda, or visit us on Namaswahi off Entebbe Highway. Call us on +256 200937566 or +256 3948632 or 46. Or you can send us a plus on WhatsApp on +256 752 1375 66. Cab International Group, your #1 rail business partner.
Mention the name that we should have a unified African currency.
You know President Gaddafi?
Yeah, of course. I don't want to mention the name. We should have a unified African currency to make it easier for trade within Africa. But that may be a little bit difficult for now. But even if it is naira to Ugandan shilling, or beef in Burundian beef, or sefa for Cameroon, there should be a very easy means to repatriate the funds that the airlines have. So that's why the thing is very costly. The second thing is that the tariffs that they pay, parking tariffs as they come when they are loading, very expensive. The third thing is that the fuel, because when you are fuel, if you are moving from Uganda, for instance, to Nigeria, that aircraft needs to refuel again in Nigeria, understand? So that also it varies from country to country. There are some countries where it's so high. So the fuel that you buy in Uganda, for aviation fuel that you buy in Uganda, that may be maybe let's say $50. I use an example. You go to the place you want to refuel again, you are refueling at $150 or $200. So you need to add all of those things to the cost of flying to those places. So that's why these are some of the issues why these airlines, they have high fares within Africa.
Yeah, I know you don't want us to talk about Gaddafi, but Gaddafi and so many the founders of Africa, those great fathers, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Ahmed Ben Bella, I talk about Jomo Kenyatta, so many on the continent that raised some of these of key issues of Africa, developing Africa, getting united and getting stronger. But there has been little attention, especially amongst African heads of states, to try to go back to the founders of these Pan-Africans who jeered this. Everyone seems to be concentrating on his own country. Yet Africa has a bigger potential, like so many people are talking about. What more can these African leaders do?
So there are a couple of things they can do. The first thing is to identify their common problems, because to solve a problem holistically, first you must do the diagnosis, right? You must do diagnosis. Uganda has done that. I was impressed with what the Honorable Minister for Science and Tech, shared with us today. I was moved. They diagnosed the problem and they were very frank about it. They said, this is a problem. And they said, how do we solve it? So African leaders need to come together and identify what is the problem. And we're not coming together. Has it cost us anything? It was frank to say, so what has it cost me if we're not working together? Frankly. And when they do that, when they list all the cost of that, and they say, so what will be the potential benefit of coming together? How will coming together solve these problems that were highlighted? You don't just come and say, let's come together. You must give empirical reasons. You must give statistics. People must do baseline data to say, look, because you are not united as African nation, because you are not coming, this is what is costing you. And they can quantify that in money, in dollar. Sometimes people shiver when they hear, say, by not cooperating, maybe see what I'm losing annually. I'm losing $1 million. I'm losing $10 million. So scientists should be brought together from the academia and the other public sector to analyze this, to see. Because when they see, then you can begin to talk to them now. Otherwise, it will be difficult because the mindset now is that people are just grabbing, one thing or the other, but they need to see. And then when they now see this is a problem, you say, now how do we solve it? How do we come together? What are the areas? Are we coming together, first structurally, in terms of policy alignment? What areas you have to identify where, because you may not just align together all in one. There may be some areas of great differences or so and so. For instance, there's no reason why within Africa, I want to come to Uganda, I need visa from Africa. It doesn't make sense. It beats my imagination. I can't understand that. So we need to understand what we want to accomplish by this. So look at shared interest, but all of these, as I said, there must be thorough baseline analysis of what our not being together as African nations have cost us, and then begin to profile this solution. That's the way to go. Otherwise, it will be difficult to convince somebody just stand and say, we need to come together so that you build this. No, very empirical baseline data that you use to show that this is what you are losing, and quantify it, as I said, in monetary terms, economic terms. What are you losing economically by not coming together? So that's that way it goes.
Thank you. So also on innovation, the issue of communication is something that is very crucial. African countries are still speaking former colonial languages, and you will be surprised that even when they've never been to France, many of them, most of West Africa and Central Africa are speaking French, and then those ones, of course, are speaking English and other countries. People grow up without speaking these foreign countries, foreign languages, as if they are their mother languages. Will there be a day when this is going to come to an end, or it is going to be forever?
So I want to also say that language in Africa is different as from what many other part, because even within a country in Africa, for instance, take Uganda, there are different dialects, right? People don't speak one common language in Uganda. There are people who there's so even though there's an effort, for instance, to integrate and maybe speak Swahili, maybe in this part of East Africa, but we still have indigenous places where this is not there. So I see that as something that's a strength also, because there's strength in diversity. We may come to identify maybe common language, and I see it two ways, right? You can look at the East African community and say, okay, this is one East African community. You go to West African community, you can identify one again. You can go to Central Africa and North Africa, you can identify one again. That way it is a bit easier because the cultural differences amongst the different regions of Africa, they're very vast. So if you want to do just one language, it will be difficult. So it's better to do it on a regional basis. Okay, East Africa, West Africa, North Africa, Central Africa, something like that. That way it's easier to integrate and then come across. But again, I see that also as an opportunity for strength. I believe, and I've said it in many places where I've said, I said, if you come to a country and then people learn science in their indigenous language, they are better scientists than when they learn it in a foreign language. So you are very correct. We have
Of all the strength that your sweat goes in every single moment that you wake up early in the morning, go to sleep, bed late, you want to have a beautiful home. Acquiring a beautiful home makes your dreams come true. We at CABE International Group are proud to extend our deepest in strength, expertise and team to make your home beautiful. We do stone building and carving on all the nature of buildings that you would like to hold. Stones make a home so beautiful that you cannot underestimate the beauty of stones. From every perfect stone, every carve and every crafting, we do and we achieve this. At CABE International Group, we don't only do that, we also paint your homes. Every nature or paint that you would love to make your home beautiful is available at Cape International Group. A well-dedicated team is here to make it happen for you. Contact us today so we can make your home the most beautiful and secure of all at friendly prices. That is what we are promising you, with a lot of dedication and sincerity, honesty, and every category that you want to achieve. This is what we are talking about. Cape International Group, your number one partner to make a beautiful home for you with great services of painting and stone. This is what we are. Call us today on +256 773 1375 66.
Made that proposition several like for instance in my university I made that proposition that people need to learn, study in. You say somebody is an illiterate because he doesn't know how to speak English. That's not correct. But he has good skills, good scientific skills. He doesn't know how to speak English, or say he's an illiterate. He's not an illiterate. The village woman or so you see somewhere who may not know how to speak English or so, but has good skills, good art, good sense of technology that they transfer to people. These are not illiterate. These are not illiterate. So I agree with you completely. It needs to be redefined where Africans will emphasize indigenous language for trade, for communication, for research and development. But it has to come with proper planning. You don't just wake up and say, proper planning. You need to start from the grassroots and look at other people who are also not in that ecosystem, and begin to use that, whatever language you want to use to address, the issues.
As we wind up, Professor, there's been uh, military coups in West Africa of recent. And I think 3, 4, 5 countries right now, the leaders there have come through coups, and they have also driven their colonial masters away, especially France has been evicted or asked to leave these countries.
Yes.
Do you think they take those who are taking over those countries are going to solve the problems of West Africa or even Africa at large?
Yeah, so you see, you must be able to separate two critical issues.
Welcome to Princess Branding Services. Do you have a party, introduction, or you have lost a loved one and you intend to do burial or branding? At Princess Branding Services, they do branding for baby shower, political rallies, and all kinds of celebrations and functions. Contact us for great and friendly, affordable prices. We will brand your t-shirts, capes, bottles, umbrellas, photos, bags, frames, and much more. Contact us on the number on your screen. +256 783 20 95 79 or +256 744 580326. Email princessbranding256@gmail.com.
Governance.
Bad governance.
So when there's bad governance in any nation, then people look for alternatives, whether the alternative is good or bad. They don't just want something bad. So that's what has happened. That's what has happened to many of these, because the governance has been bad, and so people want alternatives. So they want that. But the second thing again is that the ability for somebody, for a military personnel also to take over and then transform it to something that is good, is something that is unpredictable. There's no hard and fast rule. So it depends on the individual. For instance, there are, the guy in Burkina Faso, so, so they have different strategies that they are using, you know. But I've always presented this case. I said, now, if you want to chase away, like we did in Africa, we rushed independence. If you want to chase away, the colonial masters or so, so what capacity do you have to sustain and to sustain and to surpass whatever they have left behind? You must develop those capacities. The people, the individual, and capacity is about human beings, right? It's not about structure. You have beautiful structures, but you have wrong human beings who have not been trained and developed. They'll put down those structures within less than 2 years or thereabout. So I always say, it's not a straightforward answer. It depends on the individual person that is taking over, what policies he has to empower the people to take development to the next level. Those who are not prepared to take power, they just say, this is bad, I come and do coup d'etat, and I go over and I stay in the country.
Global Logistics Limited, your number one customs clearing and forwarding cargo consolidation warehouse company. We do air shipment, worldwide sea shipment, transportation, tax consultation. Lovey Logistics Limited is a competent company specializing in logistics clearing and forwarding services. We have the necessary skills and resources and partnerships to tackle sizable projects to our clients' satisfaction. We are located at Mganzaraza Plaza near the entrance of Katwe, Kampala, Uganda. Call us on +256 779 634 328 or +256 701 784 648 or visit our website glovylogistics.com or write to johnglovy@gmail.com. Glovy Logistics Limited, your number one clearing and forwarding company.
May find out that they may be worse than what the other people were doing. But all of this depends. It's country dependent, dependent on individuals, independent. So there's no quick fixes to that. But overall, as I said, what you need to understand what drove them. What's the root cause behind these people taking over and then chasing away maybe the colonial masters also? It's because they see bad governance and they identify in some cases that this so-called bad governance that these other leaders, democratic leaders, were propagating, that the colonial masters, quote unquote, have not told them that what you did is wrong. They have been supporting them one way or the other. They have been encouraging them. Like I have in my country, there was a musician, they call Fela Nicola Kuti. Fela Kuti. Yes, Fela Kuti. He sang, he used to sing in pidgin English. But one of the famous songs he sang, he said, when he said, teacher, don't teach me because you didn't do well. You didn't teach me well. And he said, Oyibo teach me that something bad is good, and teacher is now copying Oyibo's system. So I don't want to copy the colonial system because what they taught us is not good. But all those ones also have they are contextual.
Yes. Is there anything that you would like to say, Professor, as we wind up?
Yeah. So I want to say thanks to the ECA for organizing this STI forum. For creating jobs for Africans. It's one of the best things that we need to leverage on. And some of the lessons we have learned from this meeting is already showing us that first we have capacities here and there. In different parts of Africa, people are doing different things that show that we have the capacity to do that. So let the government, the various regional government, and let the African Union also take this thing to heart and then be very deliberate, because development, growth, has to be deliberate. It shouldn't be left to circumstance. So people, the governments must be involved. There are policies that even private sectors cannot implement except government puts their hand. And as I said again, I'm very excited at the example of Uganda, and I wish that we're going to broadcast this and use it as a model for other African nations to see. So,
Professor Charles Esimone.
Yes.
It's been great speaking to you on the Senior Citizens Talk of HICGI News Agency. Subscribe to our channels on YouTube and all social media. This show is brought to you by Kevin Immersion Group in partnership with Hilda Planet Global Organization and Special Consultative Status with United Nations, Glovy Logistics in Africa at Heart. My name is Chivombi Ernest Benjamin. On the camera is Faith Barbara Ruhinda. Until next time.
Thank you.
The Senior Citizens Talk is brought to you by Africa at Heart, Heal the Planet Global Organization, HICGI News Agency. Subscribe right now to get our latest updates sent every single Sunday. Don't forget also the Talk to the World show that is running every Thursday at 4 p.m. Subscribe here on YouTube and make your notification bell right here. HICGI News Agency. Visit us on hicginewsagency.com and find us on all social media platforms on X, call it Twitter, on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. HICGI News Agency. Subscribe now.